Hello, and welcome to Common Censored. I'm Lee Camp here with Eleanor Goldfield.
Hello.
And this is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes other shit.
And we got a great episode for you. We got a hell of an episode, packed full episode. Eleanor has decided to go with a margarita for the show, which I support, but I'm a little worried because I have a coffee here, and I'm afraid that this is the the problem, like where friends can't hang out if they're on different drugs. Like one of you is going with tequila, and then the other friend is on meth. It's just different vibes,
I'm already feeling that you're a little too up for me. I'm enjoying this laid back margarita vibe, and you're coming across a little sharp.
Just blunt it just a little bit.
Just calm down, man.
Take it down a notch.
Oh.
I think that's incorrect, and I got to tell you, I am unhappy with the way things have started. I really like the way this episode started. I thought it would go easy, and now it hasn't. And this coffee's good.
I should note that Lee is drinking Swedish coffee, which interesting little trivia point here.
Which I like.
Swedes, hold on. Swedes drink more coffee per capita than anyone else in the world. And Swedish coffee tends to also be strong as fuck, so Lee is going to be bouncing off the walls pretty soon.
Which I like the Swedish coffee, but I didn't like you have to brew it with an Allen wrench, which is fucking stupid.
Well,
because I was sitting there was a frowny face if I put it in wrong, and I didn't know. So I ended up kicking.
But did
the
you
thing.
get all the pieces? Sometimes the package doesn't come with all the pieces.
There were 3 lug nuts left over, but I drank them. So does that count?
That's good.
Okay.
Hopefully you'll pass them without too much problem.
Well, if I don't, just stick an Allen wrench up there.
Not my job.
I gotta call up Alan. He's gonna be concerned.
Did you ever, a quick tangent, there are these amazing videos of people on drugs trying to put together IKEA furniture. It's fucking hilarious, and I can't remember if it's the LSD or the mushroom one.
Were people sober not trying to put together IKEA furniture not hilarious enough? I mean, there's a lot of screaming.
The point.
People get beat. Divorces happen. Like, that's sober.
Actually, hilarious story. When Lee and I were putting together an IKEA bed, we're like sitting in the middle of it, and there's just like chips of wood all over the place. We're not really sure where that hammer came from. And Lee's looking at the instructions, and it gets quiet for a moment, and I'm like, Lee? And I just hear him go, no, I disagree.
I was talking to the instructions because sometimes you got to put them in their place. Because if the instructions, I know this with IKEA furniture specifically, if the instructions don't know the hierarchy early on, then it'll not go right.
You capitalist bastard.
They need to know who's boss early on in the procedure, or you're gonna end up with some fucked up shit.
Anyway, check out those videos because they're hilarious. And there's one moment, I can't remember if it's mushrooms or LSD, where the person goes, and then you need the Allen wrench. Allen? Who's Allen? And it's and there's just, and inevitably, spoiler alert, none of like the bookshelves or whatever the fuck they're putting together actually get made. They quickly veer off, and I think some people say they want to go on a walk just to look at leaves.
The most recent purchase from IKEA, and then we'll get to Joe Biden, but the most recent... I'm trying to ease us into talking about Joe Biden because otherwise we'd be furious up top. But the most recent purchase from IKEA, I bought a gorgeous couch, and I mean, it all went great. I ended up with an amazing armoire. So I'm happy.
So, yeah, well done.
Whatever. But yes, let's start off with Joe Biden because we want to start off with something that it burns as it goes down, and then we'll have a chaser later maybe. Joe Biden, and I know this is everywhere, but I don't care. Sometimes something's everywhere for a reason, and even though it's not a censored story, even though everyone's talking about it, I still need to talk about it.
It bears repeating.
I have to get it off my chest. Joe Biden said in a radio show or a podcast, I guess he's on camera for it, from his bunker where they won't let him out of because they know he is in no condition to get through any kind of illness.
And this just proved that point.
Much less coronavirus. It's a talk show type atmosphere and a black talk show host, and Joe Biden says, if you're considering voting for Trump, you ain't black.
And that's a direct quote, folks.
That's a direct quote. And then adds like a, come on, man. Like hey, daddy-o. I think he thinks he's some sort of like beatnik from the, like, I'm going to get down with the dudes on the street, daddy-o. I know what's hip. Hip cat, right? Oh, God.
Yeah, and then he went on to say something about like he shouldn't have been a wise guy, and I'm like, why are you just trying? You went from trying to be a black guy.
Oh no, that was his apology.
Yeah, I know.
He said I shouldn't have been a wise guy.
You went from trying to sound what you think a black guy sounds like to sounding like the caricature of an Italian mafioso. Like, what the fuck is going on? Just stop talking.
He's at the point of senility where he's just reenacting various movies he's seen, but without saying I'm doing that. So he just goes into them.
I have to say I found his Joe Pesci lacking.
It's true, it was. But he has started carrying a baseball bat around, which everyone's been asking about. But let's talk about why this is so offensive. Now, here's the thing. We're not at no point are we defending that Trump has been good for African Americans in this country.
Or
Trump,
anyone.
Or anyone in this country. But specifically, yes, he is more forthright with his racism than your average politician, Trump is. However, people have to understand what Joe Biden's record is. This is a guy who was friends with the segregationists in his early years in the Senate. He gave the eulogy for Strom Thurmond, who used to be a Dixiecrat. He was that old when he died. Used to be part of the, let's have a separate country, basically, for black and white Americans. This was one of his best friends. On top of that, he obviously was horrible for Anita Hill, which and that hearing, he oversaw the hearing where she was not given,
stopped her from testifying.
Yeah, stopped her. Well, she did testify, but stopped the people that would have vouched for what she said from testifying. And
didn't he cut her testimony short?
Right, cut it short, right. And yeah, so he was crap on that front. And then perhaps the biggest one is the 96, 94 crime bill? I can't remember which year it is, but it is largely responsible, under Bill Clinton, largely responsible for the giant increase in mass incarceration. We have over doubled our percentage of incarcerated. We're up now to 1 out of every 3 black males in this country is at some level in the prison system. Not all behind bars, but some level in the system. We have more black men in jail right now, as you can read. Yeah, then there were slaves, as you can read in the new Jim Crow, excellent book. But then there were slaves back when there was slavery in this country. We have over 2 million people behind bars. We are the largest per capita prison state in the world. And that is thanks to a crime bill that Joe Biden was like the hero of. Mm-hmm. Like he was the masthead standing at the front. You know those crazy, like when big old ships, they have the crazy half-naked woman carved into the front of the ship. Joe Biden was that woman, all right? Half-naked, tits out.
Okay.
Screaming for the victory of this crime bill.
Can't unhear that.
So, what? Yes, Trump is a racist, but the idea that and your average black American shouldn't have some qualms at the least about voting for Joe Biden?
Well, and just the idea that it's taken for granted that black folks will always vote for the Democrat because, hey, what's your other choice? Your other choice is the Republicans who are...
Someone actually said on stage, what's your other choice? What choice do you have or something like that?
Well, and that, I don't know who said that, but it's a point that the Democrats know well. So the Democrats expect not just the black vote, but the Latinx vote. They expect the union worker vote, despite the fact that they're incredible union busters. They expect basically everybody but the Proud Boy vote, which is the majority of the United States.
The Proud Boy vote.
So which is horrific.
If you have sworn off masturbation in a hazing ritual
because you hate black people
to join your hate group, then that's the only demographic that the Democrats are like, yeah, we probably won't get them.
You know what? That's not for us. But we're willing to negotiate. So basically, the Democrats just take these votes for granted, which is why it's so irritating and frustrating when somebody says, Nader or Jill Stein or Howie Hawkins, they're stealing votes from the Democrats. Well, first of all, that supposes that these votes already belong to someone, because you can't steal something that doesn't belong to someone else. So therefore, the Democrats are suggesting that you shouldn't even vote because your vote is already predetermined. You're going to have to vote Democrat because that's your choice, quote unquote, in this country. And if you try to veer from this path of the two-party system, then it's your fault. All of the ills that happen, even though all of those ills are constructed by those very same two parties.
And what perhaps is so crazy about this is most Black Americans and most, if you're talking about majority Hispanic Americans, over 50% are going to vote or generally would vote for the Democrat just because they do not like Trump. They understand that he is racist, and they have a tougher time seeing through all the kind of bullshit rhetoric to see that, like, Joe Biden is racist in his ways. And so really all Joe Biden has to do, and Joe Biden was Obama's VP, which most of African Americans in this country still are fans of Obama because it's been effective propaganda making people think Obama did wonderful things for people. But so all Joe Biden has to do is just not be fucking Looney Tunes, and he will get most of those votes, just statistically speaking. But here he is running around going, listen, brother, let me tell you, you ain't black if you don't vote for me. Like, his whole staff has to just be sitting outside of camera view during these interviews, just slugging themselves in the forehead like, oh, for fuck, did he just say that? It's like all he has to do is be a normal human being, but he's so senile and he doesn't remember his record that he's trying to cover up now. Like, he can't even put it together.
Well, and as we've seen, when he gets confronted with a simple question, he just lashes out with personal attacks. Like, you're an idiot, you're fat. It's like, what? Okay, if that's true, fine, but that still doesn't change the fact that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Weirdly, both Trump and he are doing that equally, but Trump's doing it because he's just a fucking awful human being asshole, and Biden's doing it
because he can't remember where he is, and he probably shat himself.
Yeah, his mind just spins and goes, I don't understand, and then the I always say George Burns, the Mr. Burns. Sorry, George Burns. The Mr. Burns in him comes running out and is like, hey, fibbity gibbeters. And so he just yells things at people. But they're both like, Trump does the same thing when he's at a press conference, and he's like,
right. And he's like, you're fake news.
Yeah, they'll ask him, one wasn't even a tough question. It was, what do you tell Americans in these dark times? And then he just went at the guy's throat. He's like, I tell him you're fake news. I'll tell him you're garbage. You're terrible. Because he didn't know the answer to that. How do I possibly comfort Americans in dark times? You're fucking terrible, garbage paper. And Joe Biden is like, I don't even understand the question, so I'm just going to call this guy fat. Like,
can I share another tidbit of Biden's choice of words that betray not only his state of mind but also his past? So this past week, it came to light that they have tapped Amy Klobuchar for a possible running mate. And he had
tapped her as possible.
Right. And he did an interview with Stephen Colbert on Thursday night, and said that the invasive vetting process will soon begin.
What word was he going for?
If you're asking me to figure out what the fuck Biden's trying to say I don't know.
Perhaps with his history with women, he shouldn't talk about invasive procedures.
No, he should not.
But what's interesting, a lot of people don't know this about Eleanor, is despite all of your substantive critiques of Biden, you love Amy Klobuchar, right?
Love! Oh my God. Hashtag I'm with her now.
We're old friends.
This whole, and I was doing this in 2016.
Hold on, but you have to admit, or at least we've heard she has a vagina.
I don't know. I can't
Which is-
confirm or deny this.
Which is all apparently people care about, that his VP have a
Which
vagina.
is my fucking problem, because supposedly so does Sarah Palin. So does the CEO of Lockheed Martin, Marilyn Hewson. A vagina does not mean that you are a good person. The vagina has to be attached to someone who is a good person. The vagina by itself is really utilitarian. My vagina does not think. It doesn't give me news updates or suggestions on the ethics and morals of my life.
Wasn't there like a monologues about vaginas that said they were quite wonderful?
Oh, don't get me wrong. They're wonderful. And as a player who plays the entire field, let me tell you, they're wonderful in a myriad of ways, your own and other people's. But
Haven't you seen those Georgia O'Keeffe paintings?
oh, they're beautiful.
Pictures?
Yeah, no, totally. But the idea that just because a person has a vagina means that they'll be a good choice is fucking stupid, and I can't put that any other way. It really it's what's the word?
Invasive.
I take offense to it's offensive because it means that women think with our vaginas, as if to say that we don't have the ability to think beyond, oh, woman, good, I vote for that. Like, no, that's not fucking how women work. Like, we don't see a fellow woman and like, yes, you must immediately understand what my life is like. That's absurd and it's offensive. And this really just speaks to the fact that, again, not only does Joe Biden not give a shit, but the people around him don't really care who the running mate is. They just want to have the optics of having it be a woman, first of all, to cover up the fact that Joe Biden has been accused of sexual assault. Second of all, to put that as the opponent to Trump, who's also been accused of sexual assault, but at least then they can say, look, they can point to their token woman and say, look, we have a woman on our stage, on our team, and don't you think that that's a better choice for America?
And look, she's not even standing that far away from Biden. All she needs is just, she's even cutting the 6 feet down to 4 feet distance. As long as she said, I am willing to be slightly out of arm's reach from Joe Biden, which is quite a step.
That's more than most women would say. But yeah, it's and of course the other
maybe
side.
Maybe they should lean. Well, didn't mean to use this term, but maybe they should lean into the Joe Biden accusations, and they should come out with mottos or T-shirts that say like, I want him to smell my hair, or I'm in the Joe Biden hair smelling brigade.
Oh God. Yeah, well, I mean, and we've covered this on the podcast before, the idea that you can only care about sexual assault accusations if it aligns with your personal blue or red political interests. And that, which of course means that you don't fucking believe survivors and you don't give a damn about the lived experiences of folks who survive and are victims of sexual assault.
But so yeah, it goes without saying, Amy Klobuchar, fucking horrific record. She's a corporate asshole, and
she's just like a lesser known Hillary Clinton.
She really is a lesser known Hillary, with less of a machine behind her, and she came off as, in those debates and everything, came off as completely unlikable. So you have like a horrible record on top of being unlikable. I don't know why he would ever put her as VP, but anyway. So that's our coverage of Joe Biden. Meanwhile, I think everyone agrees Trump is doing a wonderful job. So I don't know why we're even talking about this.
Well, look, here's the bottom line. Which color MAGA hat would you like? You want it to be red? Do you want it to be blue? Which racist, sexist, old white guy do you want to vote for? And this is the bottom line. And when people say we have to vote for Biden because we have to get rid of Trump, you're missing the fucking point. Because you're not going to get rid of Trump's policies just because he leaves the White House. Trump's policies are America's policies. Kids have been in cages way before Trump. The U.S. empire has been bombing innocent civilians way before Trump. The U.S. has been destroying ecosystems way before Trump. It's just that Trump, and I'm not trying to say that Trump is just like, totally benign, but, and he has made it more okay to be overtly racist and overtly fascist. But let's be honest, these are American values. And the idea that these values would somehow disappear just because you choose a different flavor of old, sexist, racist asshole is stupid. And it's naive. It means that you haven't looked at U.S. history at all, even recent U.S. history. Fuck, we had a black president who made life worse for black, brown, and indigenous folks in this country.
Yeah.
So the thought that it would make things better is naive and dangerous.
Yeah, and I decided my feeling is when people are like, oh, well, who should we vote for or something, is like, listen, you make your pick. If you vote for Biden, fine, but this discussion doesn't even matter. What should matter is a far deeper understanding of our systems and what's going on here. And to me, that is what I think is desperately needed. And at the end of the day, that should be the discussion. It shouldn't even, as your wonderful analogy says, the vote is like wiping your ass. And I also don't want to discuss with you how you wipe your ass. You go do that and just let's not make it a thing. And we'll talk instead about more important issues.
Well put. Well put.
Let's move on to since we're getting going here, let me do a quick bit of housekeeping. We had a wonderful live stream. We've been doing almost one a week, and we raised over $500, or no, nearly $500 for mutual aid on this last live stream. But
thank you all for
thank you all so much.
contributing.
If you're listening right now and you contributed, that's incredible. But I want you to know that it's totally free to attend. Do not you don't have to attend thinking you're just coming if you have money to give. It's completely free to attend. So the next one will be Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
That's the 29th.
29th at youtube.com/Moment of Clarity. The Moment of Clarity channel is where we do it. And that's 8 p.m. Eastern if you want to jot it down. That is the same day that Eleanor's documentary comes out.
Yay! Nervous excited.
Very exciting. What?
I said nervous excited.
Oh, it's a fucking incredible movie, and I hope everybody checks it out. And we will be talking about that, but we will also be answering all of your questions. And, as these live streams have gone, they're kind of all over the map, but we get to a lot of important shit, so it's kind of fun that way. We go in with a bit of an idea of a topic, but we tend to go wherever the questions and comments lead us. So that is at youtube.com/Moment of Clarity. You can subscribe for free over there and find out when we're going live, 8 p.m. Friday. And
you can check out Hard Road of Hope. You can actually pre-order the film right now at hardroadofhope.com. And please do that. It helps build momentum for me if you pre-order it. The film is available on a sliding scale starting at $5, and the suggested donation is $12. So you can give whatever you feel you can. And
And you can watch the trailer there and find out what it's about. It's an hour documentary about West Virginia, but really is like an American tale. I mean, it's a tale that points to what's gone on across America.
It's about how West Virginia is a microcosm for not just the pain and oppression of the United States, but really the radical history that has been erased, and that folks are trying to rebuild in order to light a path both for the present and for the future. So and then some incredible people in there, some incredible work being done there. So please do check it out, hardroadofhope.com.
If you want to jump over to patreon.com/commoncensored, you can become a member and grab our extra content every week. And also, you're the only ones that keep this show going. We have no ads or corporate sponsors or any of that horse shit. So it's all up to you. Patreon.com/commoncensored. Thank you guys so much. Those of you who have joined recently, you keep this show going. And my book, I have a new little blurb from Robert Scheer, who was at the. I'm gonna have him on Redacted VIP this week. But he was a legendary journalist. He was at the LA Times for 30 years and then started Truthdig and was the executive editor at Truthdig. And anyway, he said it's an incredibly important book that everyone should check out. So that's at leecampbook.com. You can get 10% off with the coupon code, the initials of the title, BPAPL. And yeah, I think I'll say some other stuff when we get to the end of the show. But let's keep going.
Okay, so you know how oftentimes in this country, dirty energy projects feel like zombies. They just keep coming back and back and back. And one of the tactics,
and they keep going even when it seems like nobody wants them.
yeah, especially that. And a lot of dirty energy projects have continued during the lockdown and the shutdown. They're deemed essential infrastructure. Or essential business. But some good news here is, and the courts have been a tactic that some organizations and some environmental movements have used, because sometimes, every now and then, the courts can actually use some fucking common sense. And this is one of those moments.
Occasionally it happens that you win in the courts.
The Chief U.S. District Judge Brian Morris upheld his April 15th ruling that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers did not adequately consult with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on risks to endangered species and habitat when it renewed the permit for the Keystone XL in 2017. So basically, this was a prior ruling that was handed down, that Keystone XL then said, I don't fucking like that ruling. And then the just recently, this past week, this U.S. District Judge Brian Morris upheld that ruling and said, no, you fucking didn't do the right amount of, research and permitting necessary. So we're gonna reaffirm that ruling and basically block the pipeline. And just a quick recap: the Keystone XL had been previously knocked down, but Trump resurrected it when he was brought into office. So basically, this is an important move because the Keystone XL has been something that activists have battled for years and years and years.
And on top of how horrible it is it even profitable for them anymore? I mean, oil is tanked. Like, fracking.
Well, that's another story.
In order for fracking to be profitable, it's got to be around $60 a barrel, and now it's down to like nothing. I mean, it's like they've just invested billions of dollars, so now they want to see it through. But it's so, and we're causing our own extinction. There is that. I mean, that tiny little thing, but
yeah. But this is, and this is, it's important to recognize the context of these rulings. This does not by any means knock down the construction of Keystone XL entirely. This is one permit to cross waterways in one particular portion of the pipeline, but the pipeline would cross, countless, I can't remember exactly how many miles it is, and it would carry up to 830,000 barrels per day of crude oil to refineries and ports on the Gulf of Mexico. And the Bayou Bridge pipeline, which I discussed and fought against with folks down in Louisiana, is kind of the tail end of the Dakota Access Pipeline and really carries a lot of this crude oil to refineries along the Gulf Coast.
Well, at least there haven't been any ill impacts of oil in
right.
the Gulf region.
At least pipelines never leak.
That area of the Gulf region is pretty pristine, I believe.
Oh, yeah. Totally. So while this is good news, and I do want to highlight that, it's important to recognize the context of this, and with that, I kind of want to jump to this story that really speaks to the power of the fossil fuel industry and why we have to remain vigilant and not think that a ruling like this allows us to kind of rest on laurels. If folks are familiar with the CARES Act, we got the CARES Act, the HEROES Act, all of these poorly named fucking acts that supposedly help us out, but don't. They help out the ruling elite and the corporate powers that rule our government.
Anytime you see an act that's named like orgasmic funjoy, then you know you're in trouble.
This is not for you.
Every time you know it's a horror show.
So the CARES Act that was supposedly created to help small businesses and workers has been really helping out the fossil fuel industry. $1.9 billion in CARES Act tax benefits have been allocated to big oil because they need it. And by that, I do mean they need it because For folks who are unaware, fossil fuel industry gets huge subsidies from our government, gigantic subsidies. The only way that they are still in the black is because they get these subsidies. And so, of course, they had to get a handout from this CARES Act.
They're up to the waist in the black.
Exactly.
The crude oil. I think it was the IMF did a study a few years ago and found that, like, we give trillions, not just the U.S., but globally, trillions of dollars to big oil to continue exploiting this resource around the world. And if we just shut off the subsidies, almost none of it would be profitable.
Absolutely. And the fossil fuel industry has been struggling for quite some time, because even before the pandemic, when oil prices tanked, even before, gas and oil were not doing well on the market. Renewables have been steadily rising in the market, and there's commentary that we've done about the capitalization or the commodification of renewables as well. But the fact of the matter is that these fossil fuels are dying. And that's another thing that I talk about in my documentary, shameless self-promotion, is that coal...
Bing, 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 bing! Blue, blue!
Coal is dying, and not even, the president can save dying coal, because it just doesn't make any fucking economic sense
I love that.
anymore.
And by the way, all these fucking free market Republicans who are like, let the market decide. It comes down to the market. Don't get in the way of the market. The market will decide what does good and happens and what companies succeed and don't. Well, meanwhile, as they're saying all that shit, massive subsidies to big oil.
Right.
That's why it succeeds on the market. Trump ran to West Virginia during his last campaign and said, we're going to bring back coal. Well, if the market is saying coal is a thing of the past, coal is destroying our planet, and therefore the market is responding and basically ruining the industry because the industry is no longer profitable, then you are interrupting in the market. You're getting in the way. You're saying, let's try and prop up big coal because it's struggling, as we've discovered that the burning of coal is a massive cause of climate change, and we're causing our own extinction, and that could be part of the problem with coal. But no, let's prop it up. But no, I thought it was the markets. They're going to decide.
Yeah, it's funny how much the free market doesn't decide for itself. It's almost like the free market is controlled by someone or something.
Well, socialism for the rich, cutthroat capitalism for the poor.
And that's exactly it. Like, the CARES Act was basically sold as assistance for, the quote-unquote little guy, the mom and pop shops, the small business owners. But in the name of small businesses, they're shoveling billions of dollars in order to prop up the fossil fuel industry, which was already faltering even before the pandemic. And now we're ensuring that with our own tax dollars that they will get bailed out, but we, the people, will not.
And people don't really understand the numbers involved in the CARES Act. It is astronomical because the big banks and the Federal Reserve can use the billions to leverage more money. So really, we're talking over $4 trillion given to the big banks and to Wall Street, while these little $1,200 checks are given out to the people. So the numbers people throw around with the CARES Act is like they don't understand the trillions has been given to the big banks.
Yeah. So I think it's important to note that, again, like just giving context to that. I'm not trying to be a downer here, but giving context to that good news story.
I don't know. Our show maybe should be titled "I'm Not Trying to Be a Downer" here.
I know. But I am definitely, if we ever have parties again, I will still be that person at parties that ends up sitting alone in the corner. Maybe that's why I stay so healthy. I end up sitting alone in the corner because no one wants to talk to me about the downfall of capitalism or the fact that we're all made of stardust.
Everyone is all made of stardust. Yeah, that comes out after the margarita. that kind of discussion. But
No, that's that's straight sober talk right there.
no, you're absolutely wrong. Everybody who's listening to this is that kind of person that would like to talk to you about that
Well,
stuff.
then we just need to have more parties where all of these people are here, and not people that talk about shopping at Bed Bath and Beyond. But yeah, so
Listen, there's nothing wrong with bed. Yeah, okay.
Lee actually, funny story. Lee actually goes into like a kind of like calm, like a kind of glazed over panic attack whenever he enters a place like a Target or a Bed Bath and Beyond. You can,
It's
it's
a
like
quiet
locked in
panic.
syndrome,
It's a
where you
qui-
can see that his eyes are like wild with fear and disgust, but he like can't. His body just moves in this kind of like slow, plodding way through the store, and he like looks horrified and scared, but like
It's
his
a-
body can't function
It's-
properly.
but at least it's a quiet panic attack. There's not a lot of screaming. It's just
but-
it's like a defeated look of the eyes.
It is.
All remaining life just drips out of them, and they surrender. Yeah.
It is. But speaking of which, now might be an interesting time to, speaking of Target and Bed Bath and Beyond.
I always wonder what the Beyond is. Do they sell Coke out the back, or what? What's the Beyond?
Well, Lee, you're obviously not part of the club.
Oh, damn it! I'll
Because
never
if you
find
were,
out.
you'd know.
I'll never find out.
It's kinky. Let me
All
just tell you.
All right.
But yeah, now might be a good transition spot to get into this sort of the weird relationship that we have with consumerism, particularly right now.
We meaning humans, or me and you?
Well, predominantly Americans.
Okay.
Because there's actually this great, and I don't love.
Or I guess let's say it's not just Americans. I'd say it's wealthy countries where, so like, in Britain, there's an equal amount of obsession with buying. No?
Well, I've
You don't
never
think
lived
so?
in lived in Britain, so I can't speak to that. But as someone who's lived in Sweden, I can say that it's not the same level at all.
Okay.
I mean, yes, there's consumerism and ads and shit. It's not like you walk down the street and it's just gardens and you're good enough. That's not. I'm not saying that, but Americans.
See, in America, there are signs that say you're good enough just the way you are, but
Plus this phone.
they're ads for like a dress. You'd be good enough just the way you are if you had this dress.
Plus the Spanx, because you shouldn't have had that donut. But yeah, so basically for Americans, there's a special. It's almost like American patriotism is based on consumption, not just the consumption of propaganda, like we're the best, we're exceptional, but also like this consumption of shit that you don't need and that you really don't want if you just like hung on a second and thought about it.
Right.
But you do it to show that you're contributing to the economy, which AKA is billionaires. And so basically, to be a patriot in the United States means that you have to be a pawn for the ruling elite
Well,
and
and
for
that's
this
when
sort of consumerist paradigm.
And they make sure that's true on multiple levels, but one of them is your credit score. Your credit score is just an analysis of whether you are a good consumer and you're doing your part by buying lots of things and having credit and owing to payments on that credit. And
Consumption is your civic duty.
and if you fuck up your credit score, it can fuck up a lot of things in your life.
Oh God, yes. But there's this really good article, and no, I'm not a big fan of BuzzFeed News, but this is a really good article written by Anne Helen Peterson in BuzzFeed that the title is "I Don't Feel Like Buying Stuff Anymore." And the sub headline is "Our economy is built on Americans of all class levels buying things. What happens when the ability and desire to do so goes away?" And it's really it's an interesting kind of like recent history as well. Like, after 9/11, people might recall that George Bush told people to go buy things. Like that was how we would come together as a nation, would be to go buy things.
Right.
Uh,
Well, and we're told to like that the answer to our fear and our where we'll get our security is by buying things. I mean, literally after perhaps the moment that Americans were most scared over the past 30, 40 years was 9/11, and in the days after, Bush said, "Go shopping, or the
Right.
terrorists win." That is how you will deal with these feelings of insecurity. Buy things.
Right. And of course, this also feeds into the fact that Americans have some of the most debt, not just, student debt, but that also really feeds into the idea that, well, you're never really going to be able to afford anything because you can't afford school, but you got to go, right? Because if you want a good job, then you have to spend that money even though you don't have it. So you always have to have this debt hanging over you. That's also part of your civic duty. And the fact is, no one has the ability to save, but you can always buy. Even if you don't have the money, you just put it on
you
credit,
put it on credit card,
and then you feel
yeah.
like you're doing your part for America.
Well, and that's why so many Americans are their net worth is like zero or
Negative.
near zero. Apparently the median, I think, or I can't remember if it's average or what, but the average net worth of African Americans in this country is like $8. If you now obviously that doesn't
and for
mean
black women, I believe it's actually negative.
negative, yeah. But and so it is like you can. It helps keep people in line to have them in debt. It helps make sure you are going to a slave job that you don't like, that is not your passion.
Right.
And,
Economic force.
Yeah, and it really creates a kind of a economic mud that everybody's living their life in, so that they can't get too angry, too active, can't really stand up and change things because they're working so much. Yeah, they're worried that if they do stand up and get angry or get active, that they could lose that job that they desperately need, even if they do have the time.
Well, and there's the psychological effects, and they've done studies, particularly like with bipolar, because one of the what is it called? One of the things that bipolar folks sometimes do is they'll just buy shit. There's like this incessant need to buy things, and indeed, like, this has become almost kind of like a widespread American issue, that buying things makes you feel, for the moment, like you have control. Like you have control over this thing that you're buying, and you're doing your part, and you might not have a lot, but you still have the ability to buy that shirt.
And it taps into a lizard brain level instinct that is, I got something,
got the marshmallow.
and I'm bringing it back to the community. Now the community might just be your household or whatever, but I got this. I killed this squirrel. I found these berries, and I'm bringing them home. And there was a cartoon, I don't know who drew it, but I fucking love, one of my favorite cartoons. This guy is holding, it's just a guy and a woman, and they have these giant smiles on their faces, like fake ridiculous smiles on their faces, and the guy is holding up just a cube. It just looks like a blank cube, and he goes, "Look, honey, I bought a thing." And then she's like, "Oh my God, good job, honey." It's just like, I got a thing.
Well, in this article, Peterson writes, quote, "Not wanting to buy things feels as bizarre as not wanting to sleep or not wanting to eat. It's been ingrained in us as Americans as an unspoken component of residency. Buying things, especially things on sale, provided a momentary sense of comfort. I was fixing some problem, completing some task simply by clicking buy now." And this is, to me, a very unique American experience. It's not something that I've experienced in other capitalist countries, even like Sweden, even where people have like this, oh, I'm going to go shopping. But it's not this like sense of I'm fixing some problem, or that it's ingrained to the level that it's ingrained in the U.S.
I think you're right that it's not at the level, but in terms of the source desires, I think the ads in Sweden are equivalent to the ads in the U.S. They're not as many of them, but the idea of, I mean, every ad, when you break down the core meaning of it, is basically, first of all, it's an ad for capitalism, for consuming, but it's also an ad about either you're not good enough, you're not looking good enough, you don't have enough food, you're not achieving enough, you don't have enough things, you don't have a nice enough car. It's always about lack. You lack these things,
right,
and you need them, and we can solve that. And that is hitting a core animalistic need that we all have in us. And by the way, I don't want this segment to come off as holier than thou. We fucking, I buy things. We don't. It's not like I never give in to this impulse. I have been known to own a shirt at times. So it definitely is like, I think you should be able to analyze these things, whether you're a part of it, whether you're living in it or not.
Right. And I think, in these times in particular, right, because kind of the point of this article, and there's another one in New Scientist written by Graham Lawton, that kind of pinpoints on how consumerism right now is in this awkward flux situation. And the question at hand...
Which is what I thought was so beautiful about the beginning of this. I was kind of thrilled. I knew that a lot of people lose their jobs, but that made me sad. But I was kind of thrilled that, like, maybe this will spur something. And to see consumerism and consumption just shut off. I mean, I know it wasn't off, but whatever. Let's say 25%, 50%, just to see it all stop. Must kind of like kickstart of fucking like, holy shit, it can all just stop. We can do this.
Well, and that's what still is exciting about this moment. And as Peterson notes, and Peterson points out in her article that she used to go through and just like buy things online. Like that was just her life. And so she's very honest about that.
Oh yeah, I bought her book about that. I'm kidding.
She's very honest about that part of herself. She's not trying to say like, oh, I only bought one dress a year at a thrift store. She was very honest about that. And she writes, will American identities and habits actually change? Or will we figure out a new and COVID-19 compatible way to consume at the same rate as before? And that's a big question that's burning right now, especially as she points out, when you factor in the newfound awareness and attention to the human cost of each purchase. And of course, she's speaking specifically about the human cost here, not like the kids in fucking like slave labor that dig up your iPhone components. But
what do you mean the human cost here?
So for everything you buy online, there are people in factories that package it, warehouses, Amazon warehouses where people are running around without basic human rights, packaging your shit, and then trucks delivering it.
You mean she's exempting the child labor in other countries or whatever?
Well, right, and I'm not trying to throw shit at her. I think she's bringing up good points, but she is focused.
I hired a kid to throw shit around. Just follow her around.
She is focused on the U.S. aspect of this.
Okay.
And so that has been something that's come up recently that kind of was just ignored or accepted before. But now when people are going to work without appropriate PPE, protective equipment, then the questions, like you have to grapple with that. Like, do I actually is it worth my purchase, like possibly having someone, in close quarters
endanger themselves?
Endanger themselves, yeah.
Do you think people are having that thought, or is she suggesting people should?
Well, no, I mean...
I worry that...
I think that people
are not quite having that thought.
I think people are having that thought because reading her article, it seemed clear to me that she was a person that hadn't thought of that before, because she was talking about how she would just kind of purchase things willy-nilly. And now she's having that thought. And the whole article starts with her saying, I was shocked that I didn't feel like buying something.
Because I bought a hat for my cat recently, and was that a bad idea? Because you don't understand, she was made for this hat. Like, this hat was for her. Like,
I understand
the
emotion.
They were a match made in heaven.
I understand
like
the emotion.
Like a little cabbie hat. I mean, come on.
I understand the emotion you're feeling right now.
Okay.
But we need to work through this.
Okay.
Yeah. But I do think that people are feeling this. And again, there's another article in New Scientist that picks this up. And, he's talking about like the idea, like that the personal hassle that goes into it. Like, you used to be able to just kind of go out shopping, but now you can't do that because you got to fucking stand in awkward lines and you got to wear a face mask. And now we're cooking at home more. And another thing that this article points out is that these, and if folks aren't familiar with them, you can probably find one for your city or your area online, but these trading pages, like the buy nothing stores. There's one buy nothing sell nothing. There's one for DC on Facebook where
So this is
basically people
people-
just post something that they're like, hey, I have this fucking bookcase, I'm tired of staring at it, who needs a bookcase?
I hope they sell it better than that, but yeah, I get the idea.
This is why I'm not good at selling things. But the idea, and people are also making pages and making, chat groups to share things like, hey, I have a lawnmower. If you need one, let's share instead of having to buy.
So I'm sure I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but this is one of the things that it kind of infuriates me is that technology right now could be used to create a sharing economy, not the fucking sharing economy that they call Uber or whatever, but a sharing economy where the entire community is all on an app. And by community, you could be as small as your block. And
Yeah.
and they know who has the drill and who has the chainsaw and who has this and who has that, and you just sign up for it on your app. And rather than each of us owning a drill we use once every 3 years, we have a community drill. And I think the reason I haven't seen these, although some do exist and there have been some startups that have tried, I think the reason you don't hear much about these is because these ideas are threatening to unfettered capitalism. The idea that we don't all need everything.
Well, and of course, that's the problem with consumerism during a pandemic. It's threatening to capitalism that you don't feel the need to look pretty or to buy a new outfit. It's like, oh, well, here's the perfect spring new wardrobe. Well, where the fuck am I going to wear it? My bathroom?
So that's why they're recommending everybody post Instagram photos of themselves so that they will get made up and put on all their makeup and pluck the eyebrows, and then they can buy all the shit so that they can feed the Instagram beast.
I can speak to this personally. I've gotten more emails from Sephora and Ulta in the past month than I ever have before, even though I've unsubscribed.
I don't know the sounds you just made, but okay.
Stop trying to be so heterosexual. I believe I forced you to walk into a Sephora with me once.
Did you say Ultra?
Ulta?
Ulta.
Okay,
Okay.
never mind. It's not important. Anyway,
I thought he was the bad guy in the latest Avengers.
Okay. So I've gotten more emails from them, saying, we have a sale and this thing's on sale and other thing's on sale.
Right.
Because they're not
desperately-
selling enough makeup because people don't feel the need to fucking put it on. Because even if you put it on, you're masked up if you fucking go outside. So
Yeah.
what's the point?
Right. And I saw one of their ads that said, why makeup for your ass? Why not? Is your ass not good enough for it? Do you think your ass shouldn't have makeup? So I think
And Lee,
they're-
this is why I feel like it was a wasted career that you didn't go into sales. Because now I, just listening to you say that, feel that
you
I need
feel
some...
like you might need it.
Yeah, I need some
Because
foundation.
the
for my
foundation.
ass.
Listen,
Maybe
if-
some rouge.
If you're gonna Instagram that ass, you gotta get some
Maybe
foundation.
a bit of
on there.
bronzer, to make
Maybe
it look
a-
like I've been out in the
A
sun.
bit of bronzer,
Yeah.
and some blush.
Yeah, exactly.
to show that the ass is trying to it feels dainty and flustered.
See, I feel that I need that now.
But can I say what I worry about? Although like I said, I was excited about this opportunity for people to change their view of unfettered consumerism, is that as long as you have endless commercials, you will never be able to tame this beast. As long as people are told all day, every day, we take up to 1,000 brand names and ads per day. As long as people told all day and every day that they need these things, that will always be there. That priming will always be there. We're just fucking. It's like an infection that is put in our brain. What's the book title I love? I was gonna have them on VIP, but they couldn't make it. But,
Advertising shits in your head.
Yeah.
It does. But let me point out a thing here. Make a point. You and I also see thousands of ads, whether we want to or not, when we're scrolling through articles, when we're emptying our inboxes, etc. We also see those, but we don't buy incessantly, and we don't have a new car every year. We don't even have a car. But point being is that once
I've been
you
meaning to tell you I have 3 out back. I just didn't want to make a thing out of it.
once you recognize, and that's what inspired me about this article, and that's what inspires me about some of the other things that I've been seeing, like on Instagram, people posting more pictures of themselves, au naturel, so to speak. But it's like once you recognize that that machine, and then you start to experience a relationship where it's you versus the machine of capitalism, of consumerism, then it's harder for them to get you back into the machine. It's harder for them to force you being a cog in that machine again, which goes not just for consuming, but also for working in unsafe conditions. So again, I think this is like a prime time, not just that people are reflecting on, why the fuck do I need to buy this just because it's on sale? I don't need another tank top. But also, why the fuck do I need to just accept these working conditions? It's not right. And I think that like people are having these questions in their minds, and I think that our job is to really facilitate those conversations and pedestal them, and like let people know, hey, you're not alone for thinking you're weird for not wanting to buy shit. Like actually,
Right.
you're very unweird for not wanting to buy shit. And here's what we can do instead. We can start building alternatives. We can look into what you talked about, Lee, this idea of sharing things, and really like that sort of community solidarity. We can do things differently.
I'm thinking of creating. Well, I totally agree, and I'm thinking of creating an app that tells you, since we were talking about, a drill or a hammer or something, tells you who in your community, who in your neighborhood has a drill or a hammer and when they're sleeping, so you can steal what you need.
Oh, I was going way darker with that.
No, just so you can get the shit you want.
I see.
Yeah, there's no murder involved.
Okay.
Just theft.
I really should stop watching like British crime series because I immediately thought, why did you want to kill them with a hammer?
So anytime you hear that someone's asleep, you just think they're gonna get murdered.
Well, when you say hammer, if you would have said like, I don't know,
when every show you watch has a hammer, every problem looks like someone's gonna get murdered.
that's a saying.
That's
yes.
a saying.
I recall that. Yes. Okay, that's creepy. Still, even if we take away the murder,
Okay,
it's
that's
still
creepy.
creepy.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right then. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of positive. They say that that if everybody in the world lived the way Americans lived, then we'd need 5 Earths to keep going.
Yeah.
So I think we can get it down to 4 Earths. I really do. And then I think we'll be fine.
Well, and so the thing that Graham Lawton writes in the New Scientist is something that environmentalists have talked about quite a bit. Is it's like this wartime ideology, quote unquote. And I remember interviewing my great aunt. It was unfortunately passed, but she spoke of the rations.
You interviewed her before, though.
No, just last night we were
okay.
lit some candles and
Ouija board interview.
yeah, exactly. A lot of misspellings, but that's fine. But she spoke of rations during the Second World War in Sweden, which of course was not a front line area, but countries and communities were affected across Europe, even if they weren't technically war zones. And the point that Lawton makes in his article is that this kind of, and it's not to say that we should promote scarcity, but this idea that you can't just buy whatever the fuck you want. I mean, my grandmother, I remember she told me she had like two suits, like a nice
Right.
A nice suit with a nice skirt, and then she had like a couple of dresses, and that like her closet was small. There wasn't a lot of shit in it, and she was still like a pretty well off
See,
woman.
but the problem with that is then the guy you meet has to like you for you. Which,
yeah,
That's
I
an
see
issue.
where you're going with that.
yeah, because he's
But-
seen the 2 dresses.
But now we could just make Instagram filters that dress you in different outfits. You don't even have to buy them.
And especially since we never meet each other, we're just over video.
Right.
That'd be perfect.
Problem solved.
And they didn't buy Sephora back then because they just rubbed berries on their faces, right?
Particularly in Sweden.
Yeah.
We're still doing that and riding polar bears. No, but this idea that like the concept of going out to buy just to buy is relatively new if you look at, the 20th century and recent history. So,
Right.
and we, we could get into Bernays and all of that shit some other time, but not the sauce.
And it became our sport
Right.
of America. Was like, let's go shopping.
Right. And so to really address not just like the gross income inequality and the gross oppression of capitalism, but also climate change, because climate change, the climate can't keep up with our consumption levels. We need to address this in a kind of wartime ideology and say that we are at war with capitalism.
I
and
agree.
Consumption.
I absolutely agree, and that's another thing I was thinking when all this stuff shut down, when every restaurant, every event, and everything, and unfortunately that includes my comedy shows. But still, I realized that like this is what it should be to deal with climate change.
Right.
There should be a fucking global announcement that we're basically going to live like this, although probably more simple, for the next 10 to 20 years while we get really good sustainable energy set up. We cut our carbon footprint to near zero, and we completely switch off fossil fuels. And that's the only way, with the point of no return 9 years away, that's the only way we elongate that. And it should be like a war. It should be a wartime footing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, great show. I think you did great.
Well done. You too.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Please go over to patreon.com/commoncensored and you can join up and get the extra. We're going to go over there and chat for 10 to 15 more minutes. And if you don't want to get a thing and purchase a thing, you can get Eleanor's new documentary coming out. You can pre-order now at hardroadofhope.com. We have a live stream where we'll be taking your questions, and they don't need to be questions about the movie. They can be about whatever, and we'll be chatting with you 8 p.m. Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, only at youtube.com/Moment of Clarity, which is not the regular Redacted Tonight channel. That's the Moment of Clarity channel. And all of Eleanor's stuff is at artkillingapathy.com. You can email us questions or ideas at commoncensored@protonmail.com. That is also where you should email if you are owed a copy of my book or a PDF for signing up at the Patreon. If you want to collect your perk for whichever you signed up for, commoncensored@protonmail.com. Please email us there. And yeah, thanks a lot and keep fighting.
Act out.